Pushing back on a New York Times report saying that the president was briefed on U.S. intelligence that Russia offered Taliban fighters bounties for dead American troops in Afghanistan and did nothing. Trump officials say that the report had yet to be authenticated and that the president was not aware of it. So is this a failure of the intelligence agencies or an example of media recklessness by publishing unverified claims? And is the intel strong enough to demand some action on our part against the Russians? Florida Congressman Greg Steube is a U.S. Army veteran, and he joins us now. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you for your service, as always. I got to put aside for a second the president's role in all this. You're on the Veterans Affairs Committee. I'm sure this is an issue that you want to get to the bottom of. Do you think that the story is true, that the Russians actually did this, set a bounty for U.S. service people?
Well, I think that's something that we need to get to the bottom to and have actually real evidence. But to me, this seems like another Russian hoax concocted by the Democrats and the left-string media. I mean, I certainly wouldn't believe a New York Times report from sources in the Intelligence Bureau. And after going through 2.5 years, 3 years of the Russian collusion hoax with the Trump campaign, I certainly don't believe this without seeing evidence first. Look, if this type of stuff is going on, the president would be briefed on it. He wasn't briefed because what we're being told is there wasn't even a congregation in the intelligence community that the information was accurate. So they didn't even want to brief the president and the vice president. So even if our intelligence community can't even agree on it, then certainly it's not something that bears evidence to start making accusations as to this president's culpability.
Well, despite the fact that the New York Times has not withdrawn or corrected any part of the story suggesting that the president was briefed by it, our own Jennifer Griffin, who is really the golden star in terms of getting information from what happens in the Pentagon and the NSC, says we can confirm that the NSC did recently meet to come up with a menu of responses to Russian actions, but they did not brief the president on it because, as you say, it wasn't confirmed.
Yeah, the NSC is not the president. The accusation that was made both by the Democrats, I just read Majority Leader Hoyer's press release basically putting all this on the president and saying he hasn't taken any action. Well, he wasn't even briefed. So they're already saying that he didn't do the things that he should have done as president, and he didn't even know about it and wasn't officially briefed on it. So already this has become a political issue where you have an intelligence insider feeding information to the New York Times when even our intelligence community can't agree upon it.
Can we find out who that insider is?
I hope so, but I can guarantee you it's going to take a matter of time before that information is out there. But I would love to know who that is and under what authority he had the ability to speak to the New York Times. And if he didn't have the authority to speak to the press, he should be punished for leaking that information to the press.
Who would punish him?
Whoever he works for, whoever his direct supervisor is.
Would you have any authority? Would Congress have any authority to impose charges against him?
No, it's within the administration, so it'd be within the National Security Administration's hierarchy of command that if he breached protocols and standards and procedures and leaked information that wasn't accurate and or wasn't appropriate to be leaked at that point in time, he should be held accountable for that.
All right. Well, we are still, Congressman, as you well know, in the midst of trying to withdraw our 18-year involvement from Afghanistan somehow. I'm just wondering if all of this kerfuffle is going to block our attempts to do that now.
Look, I supported the president in his withdrawals and his paced withdrawals. I served in Iraq and spent a lot of time there, and I can tell you a lot of my constituents wonder why we send our sons and daughters over there to fight for a war where we don't see what the real mission and purpose is at this time. So I support the president's plan to try to bring our troops back in a slow, militarized withdrawal with the support of our military commanders. And I think there's a lot of frustration in the country and in the constituency because of that.
Well, my son, not to brag, but my son is a Marine who served both in Iraq and almost a year in Afghanistan. He said Afghanistan was the worst of his two duties during his encampment overseas, and I would just hate to see anybody else have to do that. I mean, it's a horrible assignment, and it's one that American service people, particularly in light of this new information, should not be forced to serve under. Congressman, we thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
And we want